We got Lee Jacobs and Cyan
Let's
Bannister.
go.
Here we
Hey,
go.
welcome
Hey
to
guys,
the
what's
Nice
up?
chain.
What's up? Congratulations, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Already putting those LP dollars to work with some nice jewelry.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, this little thing.
Oh, yeah.
No, that was fun one.
That was fun
gold
one.
chains around here at Long Journey. So yeah, sometimes I put this on.
Fantastic. Can you give us the overview? Where'd Long Journey start? How'd you get here? What are you announcing today?
Yeah, Long Journey started in 2020 when Cyan and I, we've been really good friends from our days at AngelList.
Mhm.
And she had decided that, she wanted to go back into her roots at early stage.
Mhm.
And we decided to start a fund together. And that was in 2020, and that was like 5 years ago. So
Yeah, I
Fantastic.
basically asked him to meet me at a coffee shop and I said, what do you think about me joining you? And we team up together. And he said, I've been manifesting this basically, like,
Yeah.
yes.
There
And
we
that was
go.
it. Like there was no further discussion really. It was just,
Yeah.
that was it.
Totally. I
That's
kind of
awesome.
knew it was going to happen. We had just had this really powerful, way of working together. And when she said, let's work together, I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for you to ask for that. Let's do it.
That's
So
amazing.
that was about 5 years ago. And today, we announced our newest fund, which is 181.18, as many 18s as we could fit in with 18 on the end of it.
There's always a few more, at least in crypto, you could
Yeah,
go
totally.
infinitely.
Yeah. There you go.
The numerology is big in tech these days. Everyone
Yeah.
loves numerology.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I
Yes.
prefer a more cretive one than just the 42069. The 42069 is a little played out at this point. I like that you're
Yeah,
into some
Totally.
new
more
Yeah, we're
tasteful.
going, high is means life.
Yep.
You've probably heard L'chaim or
Yep.
or mitzvah or something. You're given 18 or 36, which is
Yeah.
like to life. And we really think of it as our role is really respectful of the dollars we've gotten from our LPs, but also to give the gifts to entrepreneurs so they can give more and more gifts.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we're pro-life. I mean, that's not exactly what I mean to say, but it's like we love
Yeah.
life here.
Yeah, of course.
Long journey.
Yeah. Is this, sorry, if I didn't catch it, is this fund 3, fund 4?
The third institutional fund, but it's technically the fourth fund. I tried to. It's confusing for a reason, just to throw people off.
Keep them on their
but it's the
toes.
third
Keep them on their
institutional
toes.
fund.
Has the strategy changed at any point? Obviously we have a very close relationship with Justin Mayers. We've joked about this on the show. Who's a venture partner at Long Journey, for those that don't know. And I always joke about it. Anytime I see an exciting company, Justin Mayers is always like, yeah, I got in at a 2.5 cap. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I mean, you guys have been very intentional around valuation. You actually have an extremely, I feel like, risk on approach where, some of the, and not to say it's not calculated, but you're willing to give $100,000 at some point to somebody who just literally just has like a crazy idea. Talk about kind of your strategy. Has it evolved, or has it just been coming back, always
Yes,
back
you
to
wanna
kind
talk
of
about
early
that?
stage
I
roots?
mean, we start with our thesis, which is chase the magically weird. And when we went and looked back at all of our companies that had the highest returns, they had one thing in common, which was that nobody believed in them at the time. And so Justin, is remarkable at finding people and companies at their inception point, where sometimes he created inflection grants, for example, and he's always doing interesting things on the edge, like
Yeah.
doing
I
things
mean,
with Edge City.
when he started
Yeah.
Kettle and Fire in 2015, he was like, there's this thing called bone broth. And I was like, what's bone broth? He was like, yeah, you take these bones, you like squeeze them, you put them in a box and you can sell them for $8 at Whole Foods. And I was like, okay, tell me more. That was pretty absurd
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time. Now, as you know, it's a thing.
Yeah, bone broth is everywhere and everything, and everybody talks about it. So
Yep.
what we like to do is invest in things before it becomes a buzzword and it becomes consensus. And so when everybody is chasing, for example, the application layer of AI right now, we're thinking about what is next.
Yeah.
And so we're already planning ahead for the future that comes after what everyone's investing in right now. And we've done that consistently, and I think that's where all of the alpha is. And it really works for us, and it's where we like to play.
Do you think it's getting harder? People have talked recently about how the YC batches, everything feels very on trend, right? You've got defense tech, space, AI agent infrastructure. It feels like, 15 years ago, there were still secrets, right? Whereas now, information gets out super quickly. Now, the benefit if you're an investor is like if you're ahead on a trend, you can invest in something and then 2 months later it's getting a 4x, markup and you look really good. But do you find that, do you see that the internet is making it even harder to stay ahead of and find what's weird, or is it just about, sort of thinking differently and
No, I think that, so I always think that I love Y Combinator, so I don't ever want to say anything negative about them, but I think that they serve a great purpose. When you go, I've found a couple of companies in my career at Y Combinator, but again,
Flock Security was
Flock Security, for
Yeah.
example, you're basically searching for a needle in a haystack.
Yep.
And you're also, you're dealing with some pretty stiff competition. When you go in that room, it's like the who's who of venture capital and angel investing. And so, I don't really want to play in that arena. I want to dream about the future and figure out what's coming so that when that entrepreneur starts to go out and pitch people initially, a lot of people will be like, well, that doesn't fit into our thesis.
Yeah.
We're investing in nanotechnology right now.
Right.
Like no one's thinking about nanotech, but maybe nanotech is one of the next things. And so that's where we want to actually figure out, where are we going to be in 6 to 8 years? And we want to get ahead of it and do the picks and shovels of whatever that is. So we did that with Crusoe. We did that with Together AI. We're doing it with, we have a stealth company that's, in the chip space. And so we're doing things that will power AI, but staying away from kind of this Cambrian explosion of people investing in things at high valuations, because we're not going to get a price advantage if we enter now. We should have seen it in advance.
Yep. Yeah.
So, Ian, can you tell me about the Diamond Age?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's my favorite book. It's by Neil Stephenson. And I remember the first time I read this book, if you pick it up and you try to read it, the very first 10 pages or so, there's this character that's so annoying that I couldn't get past the first 10 pages. And then my husband was like, hey, he dies. And I'm like, when? It was like by like page 11. If you can just get it through, if you can get through this, I think his name's Bud.
Yeah.
He's a horrible character with like a skull gun attached to his head.
Yes.
But once you get past that, Neil Stephenson, one of the reasons why he's one of my favorite authors is he's a historian, first and foremost. And so he predicts the future by going deep into the past and understanding historically what the trends have been. And you can determine how the future will play out based off of that. And so one of the things that he predicted, among many things, like in Snow Crash, the book that he wrote, he predicted meta, he predicted VR, he predicted Second Life, and there was a company called there.com and virtual reality, period. And then in the Diamond Age, he predicts an AI future where there's a little girl who gets a book and it's indistinguishable from an iPad. And this book basically teaches her to adulthood. And so you can imagine a future where, scarcity, we live in a world of abundance. So the other thing in Diamond Age is everything is manufactured and 3D printed and on a level where everything is perfect. So if everything's perfect, the thing that becomes valuable is human innovation and human thought and human artistry. So while everybody's worrying about how we're going to mass produce art and music will be, and code and all of these things are going to be created by AI, the artisan is always going to be able to create that desk that you're at. A piece of art, a piece of music that's original from the human mind is always going to stand out as being different. And so I think that human innovation and human ingenuity and things made with human hands are just going to become incredibly valuable. So I based a lot of my investment decisions over the past, probably over 10 years based off of Neil Stephenson's work.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm going to be on a panel with him coming up. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think about Palmer with Oculus VR coming from Snow Crash. Delian's favorite book for a long time was Seven Eves, another Neil Stephenson book. Can you tell me about the actual diamond market? I believe you invested in a company that makes diamonds.
Based off of Diamond
and that's
Age,
so interesting to go from sci-fi to actual investing thesis.
Yeah, so I invested in Diamond Foundry early, and the thesis behind that was when everybody thought that they were just going to make fancy diamonds that we wear for wedding rings, I thought, what is the secret here? The secret is that we're actually going to need compute, and diamond wafers are going to be a thing. And also industrial diamonds, which are actually the more expensive diamonds, and they're not pretty. We're going to need that for cutting, for manufacturing, and for all sorts of applications. Saw blades are made out of diamonds. And when I went around to other investors and I told them about this future, going back to magically weird, they're like, you're crazy. Like, this is just going to end up being a 3-carat diamond. And this market is, they kept comparing it to De Beers and comparing it to, the diamond market. And I said, no, that's not, you're not seeing the bigger picture here. And that was completely informed by the diamond age, because in order to have this, post-scarcity future of abundance, diamonds were a critical part of that. And I don't know if you remember in the book, but there are things that are made of diamonds in there. There are buildings made of diamonds. They're just like, all of the technology was enabled because of that unlock, that we needed this material that was virtually indestructible.
How important do you feel science fiction is to the future, right? It seems like, and is there more that the technology industry should be doing to invest in, we've had people like Jason Carmen on the show who make documentaries about tech today. He wants to eventually make sci-fi, but do we need to be funding a lot more science fiction media? Is that one of the ways?
Are we running out of sci-fi? It feels like we've invented most of the things that, I grew up with, except for, flying cars, but there's already flying car startups, right?
Yeah, so my biggest gripe with Hollywood and with media in general is it's cheaper to create a dystopia than a utopia. So when we move into AI generation, we'll be able to create utopias cheaply, and that actually will allow us to tell stories about a scientific future that actually is possible. Where, before, in order to render all those things and to get things that didn't exist was incredibly expensive. So the filmmaker just went to the dystopia. It's much easier to create a wasteland, to create like robots destroyed everything, than to create robots made the future better for us. And so I do think, here's what's really interesting. I gave a talk recently and I asked everybody in the audience, who here has read Diamond Age? Only one person, and he was 20 years old, raised his hand. That is alarming to me, that people are not reading more science fiction and not writing more science fiction and not thinking about the future and what it can become. I'm really excited about shows and books like Free Body Problem, because we do need to start thinking about, we did send signals into space. They will be received at some point, and there will be aliens coming if they exist. And so like, these are things that are existential threats, not only, to all of humanity, that will bind us together, where we actually start caring about things as humans rather than nation states and things like that. Is when Earth is going to encounter an outside force, is going to be one of the most unifying forces for our entire planet. And so I think we do need to think about that. It is a future that could happen.
The utopia
it's
versus
disturbing to me that more people don't read in general.
Yeah, we're not helping there.
I can't wait to
We're reading posts. We're reading 100 posts a day to people. No, I think the utopia versus dystopia thing is super important. We see this on social media. If you post everything's bad, you'll get 100,000 likes. But if you go, no one's ever had more access to food, education, healthcare, all this stuff. It's like nobody
wants to see that stuff.
Engages.
We want conflict.
Yeah, we need
dystopia means conflict, means antagonists.
Because if you think about it, we don't talk about the 99% of everything that's going right. We fixate on the 1% that's going wrong. And it becomes this narrative that the world is going to can I curse? The world is going to shit. And basically, unfortunately, young people, when you ask them if the world is a better or worse place, they think it's a worse place because they're on TikTok, because they're on social media, because they're being fed a feed of nonstop violence and death and Tesla cars blowing up. And so your view of the world is dark and gloomy, when it's actually, people are living longer, people are more prosperous. There's so many things going on that's just so great for humanity, but we don't celebrate those things. And so I'm really hoping that part of the next 4 years of, when you see people working on deep tech and there's this new sort of reinvigoration of technology where people are excited about the future, that they start actually highlighting and talking more about the things that are going right than the things that are going wrong.
That makes sense. Sort of one last sort of random question. I'm curious to hear how you guys think about this. We seem to be entering a period of sort of renewed nationalism globally. Like Europe's waking up, America's, fighting trade wars with our closest allies. This comes at a time where, Lee, I think we met for the first time at this sort of pop-up city, right? And there's sort of these renewed experiments around cities, nation states, network states. do you foresee a future where people are traveling way more and we're all investing globally, or are we going through an era where, do you imagine that most of this fund, as an example, will be deployed here in the U.S., or are you guys thinking, how are you thinking about international?
Yeah, let's say I answer the broader frame. I think from our perspective, we're really open-minded. If you're really going to do invest in the magically weird and do things that, the absurd before it becomes consensus, you have to stay open-minded. So we've done things all over the world, in Europe and in Brazil
South
and,
America, yeah.
stuff like that. But in general, we've always been really excited about what happens in America. And I think if I had to guess, most of the dollars will be deployed that way. But yeah, these little mini cities, it's such an interesting future to imagine. I do think that we're in a recombination phase, and like the Havoc, actually, the first name of the fund that I started was Havoc VC. Naval wanted me to keep it that way, but maybe one day we'll get back to Long Journey. We'll rebrand in a few years, and you guys will get the exclusive on back to Havoc.
Fantastic.
There we go.
But
That's what I like to
I
hear.
do, yeah, Havoc.vc was my URL. But I do think that this recombination creates the opportunities for new ways of living in new cities, and Edge City, the stuff that Janine and team there are working on is really powerful. Where we met, Jordy. I don't know what you think about
I think
this
very few
recombination.
countries have the culture that we have in America where it's okay to fail. Like when I speak abroad, I go abroad and I speak in France or Italy or wherever, I have entrepreneurs who come up to me afterwards and they say, I don't live in a culture where failure is an option.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one thing that makes us special. We also have laws that are pretty well established around businesses, like that we understand how the framework works.
Yeah.
Whereas if you invest abroad, you have to understand the legal framework
Sure.
of that country, which can be problematic sometimes. And then I think going back to the Diamond Age does cover network states, and it does cover some really interesting, very futuristic concepts there. There's this group of people that they call the Neo-Victorians, and they basically have everything that's made by hand, but they're the most technologically advanced and the most wealthy group of people. And they basically band together on a set of values. And so it's possible that we'll start seeing that going forward, and we might see investable opportunities in those. But it's still very frontier, and it's still very on the edge, that sort of thinking. But in general, I think probably a majority of our investing is just going to stay in the United States.
Makes sense.
Love it.
Well, thanks for stopping by. Congrats on the
Thank
new
you, guys.
fund. We got to ring the size gong for
There
you.
we go. Thank you for bringing the chain on as well.
It's a big fund.
It's great to
Yeah,
talk to you
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Congrats. See you guys.
Good luck out there.
Bye.
See you later.